Okay, everybody, we are here with our fifth lesson of the Gilded Age Industrial Revolution, looking at unions and tactics. Economic systems, very important to know if we're going to understand the connection between communism, socialism, and labor unions. We should be able to have a good, firm understanding of our tactics that unions and industry utilize to protect their interests, and again, that connection between unions and socialist/communist theories of reform. Both those things are reactions to the Industrial Revolution and the inequity and injustices produced by the Industrial Revolution. And at the end, we'll have a little quiz to see if you check for your understanding on that. And by the way, we're talking about cows as well today, so hold on to your hats for that. One thing to keep in mind is that this period of time after the Civil War, not only a time of great economic growth, but also of great economic conflict and social change. Labor strikes in this time period were large and violent. This map showing just a few of them, and counties in which you see in the pink there, in which labor strikes were seen significantly throughout this time period, with economic downturns, especially remember the Panic of 1873, the Panic of 1893. Those are two events that especially triggered things. And the ones that you've been researching and putting in your graphic organizers, of course, are shown in big explosions there in red on the map. Notice, though, that also a good significant portion of the labor strikes tend to be in the north and the northeast, where industry is prevalent and dominant. Management versus labor. Each side has a method of and strategies to protect their interests. Some of them you've read about already, but we're going to review them here again today. The tools of management are scabs, lockouts, blacklisting, ironclad oaths, or also known as yellow dog contracts, court injunctions, and of course you bring in law enforcement and your own private investigators, such as the Pinkertons. The labor unions also have some pretty, and unions have strong, and labor has strong tools as well. Of course, going on strike, an organized strike within the union itself, deciding to walk out in looking for better work conditions, wages, and work hours. Boycotts, collective bargaining, closed shops, cooperatives, and wildcat strikes will be all things we'll take a look at here. In your outline notes here, you have basically the definition of these items. Go ahead and jot down the terms that match those. I would encourage you to go ahead on your left side of your notebook to go ahead and make perhaps a graphic organizer, an exploded mind map of those, maybe with some visuals that help you remember some of these things. But the first one for management tactics is the scab workers. Basically, scab workers are people who come in and replace those who went on strike, and they work for a lot less than anyone else did previously working for that industry. And quite often, new immigrants who just came right off of the ship, or anyone else without a job was ready and willing to work for an industry when they had their workers go out on strike. But often these people were attacked strongly by strikers because, of course, strikers don't like anyone taking their jobs. It defeats the purpose of the strike. Ironclad oaths and yellow dog contracts are written contracts between people and employers, in which they basically assign an agreement between the two sides saying that you're not going to be in the union while you're working for us in this company. This might even happen during your employment or prior to your employment in a particular industry. If you are someone who is causing problems for a particular industry or was part of a union, you might be put on a blacklist or blackballed. And this would be a list of people that is identified by a particular industry that would be distributed far and wide amongst the employers of an industry, so that it would exclude anyone who is causing problems, promoting union membership, working other workers against the industry to promote change. And quite often these people would either lose their jobs outright, attacked by thugs promoted by and hired by industry, or again, you're just not going to get a job. Your name would be spread far and wide and you would become very well known. Other things that have been used as well, as you saw and we discussed and reviewed a little bit last class, was the court injunction. Basically, government and industry has industry has government on its side and the courts on its side, and the court would basically send out a cease and desist order saying that in particular union should stop conducting its strike, and if they do not comply with that, they would be charged as a criminal and with civil penalties. Lockouts occurred as well and were used to try and keep workers out who were trying to form a union and replace them with scabs. They would basically not allow you to come to work if you were in that category. And of course, if you've seen in many of the strikes that you're researching and organizing information with, the military at the state level, the National Guard, the federal government, federal national professional armed forces were sent out by the president at one point. Police were used, private detective agencies such as the Pinkertons were used by Carnegie Steel to try and make sure that these strikes were put down and dealt with harshly. And we'll see why. Again, they're very scared of these unions from a philosophical standpoint. Union and labor tactics, strikes, unions' method for having their demands met. Basically, workers stop working until the conditions are met. This is nothing new. We probably mostly all have a good familiarity with what this is. Boycotts involve people refusing to buy a company's product to force them into meeting their demands. Again, both of these aimed at hurting the pocketbooks. And something similar to what we've seen here with the Grange and the populist ideas of reform, the development of cooperatives. Some unions were promoting the establishment of cooperatives where people could buy basic things to save money and cut out the middleman. And it would be something operated for the benefit of those people using just those services, not for profit. Those things that even unions tried to establish, as well as the Grange. Collective bargaining, as we talked about before, was something that all unions worked for, and the legal right to do that. Some states have banned it, in which you would be able to vote for, and workers would be able to vote for representatives to negotiate with labor face to face and get those differences worked out. Excuse me. Closed shops were a situation in which a particular location, an establishment, only allowed for people to work there if they were part of a union. So this was trying to keep anyone out of the workplace if they were not a union member, and protect and promote that union membership from cheap labor, especially immigrants, as we'll see that unions really dislike immigrants. And wildcat strikes occurred once in a while as well, and this is something that laborers used but unions disliked because they were a little bit random, and these would be strikes that would occur without the leadership of a union agreeing to them or calling for them. It would just be a bunch of workers walking out. So these were all tactics used by both sides, and quite often we saw that these things would result in some violence as well. So looking at cows, we're going to use cows to describe the difference between capitalism, socialism, and communism. And understanding our economic systems are really important for us to understand, at least through the year 1992, because of world events that are happening at about this time. First, before we look at each of the three topics, it's important to understand the origins of communism and socialist thought. And that kind of comes from a guy by the name of Karl Marx, you see here in the upper right-hand corner, and Joseph Engels, who write and co-author something called the Communist Manifesto in 1848. They are German philosophers, and this manifesto is a reaction to the extreme inequity and conditions that are being created in Europe at the time because of their industrial revolution and the social unrest that is occurring. And his quote, or a quote from that, helps us understand here hopefully a little bit. And he basically says, "A specter is haunting Europe, the specter of communism. It is high time that communists should openly, in the face of the whole world, publish their views, their aims, their tendencies, and meet this nursery tale of the specter of communism with a manifesto or a statement of the party itself. The communists disdain to conceal their views and aims. They openly declare their ends can be attained only with forcible overthrow of all existing social conditions. Let the ruling classes tremble at the communist revolution. The proletarians, or working class, have nothing to lose but their chains," referring to workers as slaves. "They have the world to win." This is a very scary topic for industry and government and the status quo at the time. So we're going to look at cows to help us understand this topic and this concept. Economic systems. Basically, when we look at economic systems, all of them consider the following questions. Basically, they all answer and respond to something involving what goods and services to provide to people, how they'll produce them, who will get them, and how much they will produce now and how much later. Each economic system answers these questions and does so in a different way. This chart does a good job of showing where things are kind of on a graph, continuum of economic systems, and really aligning them with political systems as well. Over here we have free democratic society and a free market system, capitalism, free enterprise. Again, as we've talked about before, laissez-faire, a low degree of government control, a low level of social services. Everybody's kind of on their own, free competition, market economy, supply and demand drives everything. And with the development of socialist thought, we have a movement in the direction of the left. Sometimes you hear about this today, referred to the left and to the right. Government's regulation of the economy moving in the leftward direction here, with government taking more power to establish regulations and rules or taxes to establish a balance in the economic system, or taking action to influence the economy when it gets out of whack, or to take care of inequities. In this case, this is what many unions are calling for. As we talked about with the populists and the Grange movement, they're actually talking about having government move in this direction and providing some sort of regulation of the economy. Now, when we get to communism and Marxist thought, this is where we have a command and a control system of economy, which usually requires a very strong totalitarian type of government. We'll get to this when we get to the Soviet Union and the Communist Revolution, and a higher degree of government control, ensuring jobs and essentials for everybody with greater economic equality. And again, it's the Industrial Revolution that brings about a movement in this direction, and these ideas coming out that tend to be very scary for not only the common person, but especially for industrialists and the government. When we look at capitalism and free market system, it's a system based on private ownership of capital, property, and business, or free enterprise. We kind of know about that. It involves economic freedom, in which everybody has the right to choose make their own economic choices. Free competition, which we have more than one producer of goods and services, ensuring choice of goods, which we've seen has kind of gone away in the Industrial Revolution with the development of monopolies. There's not competition. They did everything they could with trusts and holding companies, etc., to try and drive out other competitors, vertical and horizontal integration. And then private property, of course, having the right to own your own property, including your business. In addition, self-interest. It's based on the idea that people make decisions on things that are best for them. There's a voluntary exchange of goods in which people freely buy and sell goods. And then there's a profit motive in which people are driven to do better and improve goods and services with the interest of making money for themselves. So when we look at cows, a capitalist or free enterprise system would say, okay, you have two cows. You would sell one if you wanted to become more profitable and buy a bull. And in that case, then, of course, you're going to, your herd, typo here, your herd would multiply and you would retire wealthy. And this is a choice that you would make, a rational choice to sell one, get a bull, and then have a larger herd to become wealthy. All right. Socialism is an economic system based on cooperation instead of competition and government involvement. It's opposed to pure capitalism. The socialists of the time period and unions that we looked at with Eugene V. Debs, for example, would be calling for regulation of the economy and especially industry, and they argue that capitalists and industry are corrupt, and they would like to use and have government to reform. Our Grange movement and the populists, William Jennings Bryan, would have promoted the idea that there should be some laws and regulation of business and industries, and we're going to review some of those that have been passed here at this time, like the Sherman Antitrust Act, for example. Government ownership would occur under a system like this, in which they would control the essential industries for society's good, railroads, coal mines, telephones, for example, companies, for example, at this time. And you might even throw in here the emerging electric companies that are developing late in the century. And the idea would be to control production, set wages and prices, distribute goods so that there's profit taken kind of out of this system as much as in these categories and these industries as much as possible, so that everybody has those basic things. And they also promote the idea that workers would have more of a share and wage earning opportunity in the industries, actually own shares in the industry, since they're the producers of the wealth. They're the ones that are really the producers of wealth, they would argue, and they should have a share or ownership. And this 14 years away from the Soviet Union being formed. But the ideas and the ideology is out there, and it's a very threatening idea to our established system of economics and government, really, and laissez-faire and philosophy and way of life. Nobody wants to have their land taken away, for example, or their property. Never really gained huge membership because it was too radical, but it did have some violent strikes, and as you saw with some of the strikes that we've looked at, there was some violence, and when they saw violence, they automatically were associated with communism, and thus put down very harshly by the government. And there's a poster for the IWW on one side, and then also an Italian poster attacking capitalism on the other side. I believe this is from the early 1920s. Again, looking at the labor strikes of the later time period here, there was a good number of them, and with this idea and philosophy of socialism and communism floating out there, people are associating these as revolutionary events, that were efforts by labor to try and overthrow the system and a threat to democracy and capitalism. And so this is why labor unions were hated so much. The common person even feared them, because laissez-faire is really deeply entrenched into our mindset. Even for the common person, I would have a hard time with some of this. But with these extreme thoughts, it really caused a strong reaction from government and industry, as you saw. And so our labor strikes, because of their violent nature, and tendency to get violent, are associated, and labor unions are associated with socialism and communism and evil. One home learning left side activity for you would be to go ahead and create a matrix such as this. Jot down each of the three isms: socialism, communism, and capitalism. Maybe explain and summarize the two-call analogy for each ism here, and then come up with your own analogy that would help you better understand it. Until next time, bye-bye.